Today we are going to talk about India-Pakistan relations. This is your second class. This is our second class and we are going to discuss about India-Pakistan relations. Now, this is not one of the usual relations, international relations we are going to talk about, because our relations have been quite drastic from the start. From the inception of both of our countries, both our countries are indulged in wars. There has been state-sponsored terrorism, and the economic relations are at their lowest step currently. First, we are going to look at the evolution. Then we are going to look at the usual method, that is EGSTE. And if you don't know the meaning of these things, you can actually look at the previous class about India-China relations, which is our previous video. So we are going to talk about the evolution. See, both the nations, the history of both of the nations can be traced back to Indus Valley civilization, because we have Mohenjo-daro, Harappa. These are both in Pakistan and other cities as well, and we have other cities like Rakhi-Gari, Lothal. They are in India. So, and these four and all other Indus Valley civilization, these are big cities, were actually a part of a single civilization, that is Indus Valley civilization. Both countries originated from a same subcontinent. So Indian subcontinent comprises of India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, then Bangladesh, and this whole part is known as Indian subcontinent. This includes Sri Lanka also. And Pakistan and India got independence, and they both divided into singular countries. Even in medieval era, if you see the medieval era, both the countries' name were synonymous to each other, because there was no ruler who ruled on Pakistan individually and another ruler who ruled in India originally. There was no origin of Pakistan at that time in medieval period. There was only Hindustan, and there was only India, as Britishers knew. Okay, but when we come to modern times, okay, there is this idea of Pakistan that has been emerging. Why? Because you can read about this in Spectrum about two nation theory, and the first time Pakistan emerged as an idea was because of Rahmat Chaudhry wrote an essay. You can Google about it. We are not going to talk about it here, because we need to talk about international relations between India and Pakistan, and not the origin of Pakistan. But now, see, post independence, what happened? India bifurcated into two nations, that is India and Pakistan. Okay, and now, see, because both nations, they have been like true enemies, if you can see, from the inception as well. We have fought 3 wars in 47-48. This was a war because of Jammu and Kashmir. This was because Hari Singh signed us instrument of accession with India, and through this India got 2/3 of Jammu and Kashmir, while Pakistan only retained 1/3 of Jammu and Kashmir. This was the result of 1947-1948 war. The second war, it was in 1965. Pakistan undervalued us and underestimated our power, and they launched an Operation Gibraltar. India retaliated with a full-scale attack. This was the biggest tank army attack in the history, and the war ended with Tashkent Declaration and a UN mandated ceasefire. So Tashkent Declaration was signed in Tashkent. The third war was again in 1971. 1971, what happened? India favored the Bengali population of East Pakistan. So there was election in East Pakistan. West Pakistan did not recognize the East Pakistan results, and there was massacre. It was all there, but you only need to know that India favored the Bengali population, and this resulted in the creation of Bangladesh. Now, this point at 1971, this is an important war, because not only Pakistan faced major disrespect, or disappointment. Yeah, major disappointment is their soldiers also surrendered, and they created India successfully created Bangladesh. Okay, and it was erstwhile East Pakistan. Now in 1971, Pakistan realizes that conventional methods of warfare did not is not going to give results. We are going to we are going to resort to unconventional methods. So their state doctrine became bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. Now this is a very serious point, because now Pakistan started to resort to non-state actors such as terrorism, and this is what we call as state-sponsored terrorism. Okay. Now we are going to look at the themes that we have discussed. EGST. First one is your introduction. Yeah. So any question if you come across about India-Pakistan relation, this can be your template for India-Pakistan relations. Now you can write that India and Pakistan have always been shadowed by a dark past of war and terrorism. Both countries have indulged in 3 wars: 1948, 1965, and 1971. But the bilateral relationship deteriorated to the lowest point after Pulwama attacks. However, recent back-channel diplomacy hints a normalcy in the days to come. See what I have done. Acknowledging the past, looking at the future. Okay. This is what you do as an IS officer or an IFS officer who is going to write about the relations between two nations, particularly India. So we are going to look at economic relations, then we are going to global fora, the strategic and defense relations, technological relations, educational and cultural relations. Economic relations, they have become minimal because of Pulwama attacks. What we did was, in retaliation for Pulwama attacks, India withdrew the Pakistan's MFN status. This MFN status is most favored nation. Most favored nation status was revoked of Pakistan, and this marked the lowest point in our bilateral relations. However, in 2020-21, the bilateral trade stood at India's exports stood at 278 million USD. India's imports stood at 2 million USD. Now, most exports included vaccine and pharma products, and among others, imports from Pakistan included dates and alcohol. See, there is more amount than this. Trade is huge. Trade is larger than this, but it is actually through third parties. So what happens is, India exports to UAE, then UAE exports to Pakistan, and thus they get their products. So there is no direct contact or trade contacts between India and Pakistan. Now, even though there were restrictions between both the nations in 2020-21, but we have seen interdependencies between India and Pakistan. This can be one of our ray of hope between the two nations. Another is your global groupings. Only two global groupings that have come across: SARC. India is part of SARC, and India and Pakistan both are part of SCO and SARC. Strategic and defense relation में only one of the exercise, that is PUBG Anti-Terror 2021. This has only been planned under SCO, and India has not yet shown any interest, but the final decision is yet to be made regarding India's participation, which will be made in the future, and we'll see when we'll update the notes. The technological relations, again, they are minimal. If you find any technological relations between India and Pakistan, please post it in the comment section. Educational and cultural relations. Now, people-to-people contacts have been more because of the religious shrines in both the nations. Kartarpur corridor is an example of this, and another corridor is explored at Sharda Peeth, which is situated in POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. The common historical ties is there, but if engagement is minimal, okay, it affects the bilateral relations. Engagement where? At the top level. At the top level, if the engagement is minimal, then the bilateral relations deteriorate. Recently, Pakistan banned Indian movies, and demand in India grew to ban Pakistani. This news has been since 2018-17. You have been seeing that how Pakistani artists were treated in India. The recent example would be the case of Fawad Khan. Okay, Now, how these the challenges? What are the challenges between India and Pakistan relation? Why is our these bilateral relations so much deteriorated? Is because of these issues. First one is Jammu and Kashmir issue, which has been the bone of contention since decades. Jammu and Kashmir. Then there is river water dispute that came into picture recently. Pakistan-China relations again due to Cpec. Terrorism after 1971 war, and the connectivity issues when India realizes that Pakistan is a connection between India and the Central Asia. So the connectivity issues are there. We are going to look at Jammu and Kashmir. We are going to look at every challenge one by one. First is Jammu and Kashmir. There is territorial claim by both the nation, India and Pakistan, and even China is there. China is also having territorial claim over parts of Jammu and Kashmir, that is Aksai Chin. Frequent ceasefire violations has been witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir, and Pakistan promotion of violence in Jammu and Kashmir. So what they do is they hire intellectuals in Jammu and Kashmir, and they pay them to incite violence in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. The recent abrogation of Article 370 has aggravated the relations. You have seen in the news how the Pakistan Prime Minister has reacted to this, and how Indian Prime Minister has reacted to this. This is your map. This is the actual part of our India, the yellow part. This is our Jammu and Kashmir currently. This is our Siachen Glacier. Strategically, it is one of the important points in India. This is your Pakistan occupied Kashmir. This is your Aksai Chin that is occupied by. This area, which is in purple, was ceded to China illegally by Pakistan. Then river water disputes include the Indus Basin. Indus Basin includes the tributaries such as Jhelum, Chenab River, Beas, and Satluj. Jhelum change. Okay, so if you have to remember from north to south, what are the names of the tributaries? You can remember like this. Jhelum changed rags to bags. Okay, this is from north to south. You'll all actually remember this through this mnemonic. So all of these rivers, they pass through both of the nation. Now, due to the water shortages and water disputes, the Indus Water Treaty was signed in 1960 between India and Pakistan, and this was brokered by World Bank. Okay, in this, what they said that India would get exclusive right to use for the rivers of Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, while Pakistan will get Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. India can exploit rivers under its control, that is Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, but without disturbing the flow. Okay, so we can use these rivers. We can install any dams on it, so that the Harike Bridge, you can see there is this point where Satluj meets Beas. There is Harike Bridge actually established. So we can exploit these rivers, but without disturbing the flow of these rivers. Okay. And now the third point that comes under the challenges is Pakistan-China relations. Cpec, the Cpec part is the bone of contention now. The proposal of Cpec that is passing through POK. Now Cpec, we have discussed in previous class also that it connects Kashgar and Gawadar, and it passes through this area, POK. Okay, this POK, this passes through POK. Like you can see in map, it connects Kashgar and Gawadar. Okay. Now, in international relations or in movies, you have seen that there is this saying named enemy's enemy is a friend. Okay, this is what is true in the relations between India and in the relations between China and Pakistan. China is actually using Gawadar port to reduce the dependence on Strait of Malacca. So what they have to do is they have to pass their goods from shipping channels through South China Sea, then they have to come to Strait of Malacca, Indian Ocean, and then their goods go to the other parts of the world. So this dependence on Strait of Malacca, they are trying to reduce it by making another port, that is Gawadar port, and Cpec is one of the parts of maritime Silk Route. The fourth point is terrorism. This is also a major bone of contention. in which India has accused Pakistan of inciting violence in Jammu and Kashmir. I told you about the intellectuals, but they are powered by Pakistan to incite violence in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, plus they are providing areas to terror groups for training camps. If you see the post-Uri attacks and Pulwama attacks, there were air attacks done by India in which they attacked training camps of Jaish-e-Mohammed. But if you see, Pakistan has been indulging in providing areas to these terror groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, you name them. There are training camps established in Pakistan, and this is what is known as state-sponsored terrorism. State-sponsored terrorism against India. Okay, major terrorist attacks have been witnessed because of this. There was a time in which major cities of India, all of the major cities of India were hit by one terrorist attack. The major one came in 2008 when Mumbai was hit, 2611 attacks. The last point is connectivity issues. So Pakistan, if you see the world map, Pakistan serves as India's connection to Central Asian nations. Central Asian nations include Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, etc. Now, this Central Asian nations connectivity to India is blocked by Pakistan. Such as, one of the examples is Tapi pipeline and this Iran, Pakistan, India oil pipeline. The both of these projects have been stalled presently. Why? Because there is relations have been deteriorated to that level. Okay. While with bilateral relations at their lowest ebb, India chooses to bypass Pakistan by using Afghanistan and Iran. That is why we are developing Chabahar port, so we can bypass Pakistan. And we are also indulging in projects in Afghanistan so that we can bypass Pakistan as well. Other disputes also include this land boundary disputes such as Sir Creek dispute, Siachen Glacier dispute, the legal disputes which is Kulbhushan Jadhav case in ICJ, whose result is yet to come. That is why I have not discussed in this article. The way forward. Now we have to give a way forward, like how we can introduce or how we can improve the relations. So as a template, you can write India as an emerging nation in South Asia has moved beyond the disputes of Western border. Western border dispute include Pakistan. So India definitely wants peace with all nations, including Pakistan. That is there. Okay. Now in this regard, we must improve our trade relations. So if you see, if the trade relations are good between two nations, there will be bilateral relations which are also good between the nations. We have to remove the trade barriers, restore the MFN status. To increase the trade, we have to cut the import duties as well. Promote soft as well as hard power. Now, what do you mean by soft power? Soft power means the religious diplomacy that we have seen in Kartarpur corridor, and there is cricket diplomacy in which we can promote cricket between the two nations. In hard diplomacy, you have to have regular meetings between both the nations at the top level, and there should be back channel diplomacy as well. Recently, back channel diplomacy has been fruitful, and they have given us some good results. The Indus Water Treaty is considered one of the world's successful treaty between two nations such as India and Pakistan. With a reputation such as India and Pakistan, if you see, there are two nations which has been indulged in war, and IWT came as a ray of hope. Like, this was one of the world's successful treaty. Now we need to construct a water grid. Apart from IWT, we need to construct a water grid between both the nations to address this water dispute. Cooperation in economic and social issues. Cooperation in economic and social issues. These economic and social issues are common between both nations, such as unemployment, child health, women's status, agriculture. They can be done to improve our ties. Okay. In conclusion, again, this is our template for conclusion. Past experiences suggest that there is an increase in terrorist activities whenever both sides indulge in peace talks. So whenever India and Pakistan try to indulge in peace talks, there will be increase in terrorist activities. In this background, both nations shall cooperate to remove terrorism first. Okay, remove terrorism first, Coexistence with peace through mutual trust can establish a prosperous South Asia. Past experiences in acknowledging the past, prosperous South Asia, looking for the future. Okay. Okay, now we are going to look at the practice question of the day. The practice question is on your screen right now. Please post the answer in the comment section. This was your practice question for the last class. The answer is all of them. This 1, 2 and 3. India and China are part of these all three organizations.